Let's move on then to the next big subject, Patrick, which is, of course, Israel-Palestine.
Well, this is the deal of the century. This is the much anticipated deal, the peace deal brokered by Donald Trump, the President of the United States, supposedly between Israel and Palestine. But as you can see by the flags up on this graphic, Mike, Palestinians weren't really consulted about this deal. This was a deal done between the White House and Israel to dictate the future of the Israeli state and the Palestinian territories. Now we're going to break down in detail what this deal entails and how, or how it's not different from previous peace deals that have been offered by previous U.S. administrations or brokered by the Americans. So there's Benjamin Netanyahu there with Trump at the White House, mind you, playing the Israeli national anthem as Trump got up onto the podium. You can watch
in the White House?
In the White House press room. So that's historic, certainly on its own. But Netanyahu is all smiles, Mike. He's grinning ear to ear. He's getting everything he wants right before the third runoff in March for the contested Israeli election. So this is politically very important for Netanyahu, as it is for Donald Trump in an election year. So who is really behind this deal? Well, this was the Jared Kushner deal initially, and this is the president's son-in-law here. This is Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. This was the deal of the century. This is apparently something he slapped together, which Donald Trump just recently put his name on officially. This is what Kushner had to say in an interview with CNN recently. He said the White House's plan is a great deal, and if the Palestinians reject it, they're going to screw up another opportunity like they've screwed up every other opportunity they've ever had in their existence.
Wow.
Quite strong words, in their existence, so, you know, going back a few thousand years. So this is quite a aggressive and I would say disrespectful statement by the president's son-in-law. I mean, so if he's going in to negotiate a deal, and this is the sort of rhetoric you're putting out. And
is this how you make friends?
Is this the art of the deal? Basically, you know, we're giving you an ultimatum here. This is not a deal. Clearly, this is an ultimatum.
Right.
So, Will, it gets better than that, Mike. He said past proposals have been 2 to 3 pages. This one is over 80 pages, and it has a map. It's never been done before, said Jared Kushner. So he's providing a map along with 80 pages, and we're meant to be impressed by that. So the president's son-in-law, or the president-in-law, as he's called by some people, he's really wowing them with this deal. Let's continue. It does even get better than this, believe it or not. If they screw up this opportunity, which again, they have a perfect track record of missing opportunities. If they screw this up, I think that they will have a very hard time looking at the international community in its face, saying they are victims, saying they have rights. This is a great deal for them. So if you don't accept this ultimatum, then you lose your rights, is basically what he's saying. And yeah, and they have no standing in the international community.
Yeah.
So this is even worse than previous peace plans that have been put forward, and incredibly arrogant by Jared Kushner. And everybody's saying this out in the journalistic sphere, by the way. This is what pretty much 90% of a lot of the publications I've read have been saying. So let's move on and see how's the Palestinian leadership reacted to this, Mike. Here's Mahmoud Abbas, president of the Palestinian Authority. This is what he said: Jerusalem is not for sale, and all of our rights, those are not for sale or for compromise. Plots, deals of the century, plans to liquidate the Palestinian cause are doomed to failure. This is the important thing you're looking at here, is there was a split and a schism within the Palestinian leadership before this deal of the century was unveiled. Mm-hmm. You had major splits between the PA, between Hamas in Gaza, between Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Now you see a united front among the Palestinians, and in a way that only Trump could do.
And what was Mahmoud Abbas's personal popularity like?
It wasn't great. In the West Bank, accepted as the leader of the Palestinian Authority, not really very popular at all in Gaza. But now, again, Trump has this great ability through his bombast to galvanize the opposition wherever it is in the world. So he's done it once again. The magic of Trump continues. So you can see the technique by the U.S., by the Israeli leadership, is to say this is a problem with the Palestinian leadership. That we're giving them another opportunity. This is what they did with Camp David. It was basically the same con. We made you a perfectly good offer and you rejected it. Therefore, you deserve everything that you got after that, which is to be pounded by the IDF and lose more territory, etc. So they're doing the same thing again now. So they'll continue to demonize the Palestinian leadership and blame them if it fails. But here now, this is interesting. They're going after the King of Jordan. So a synchronized attacks on King Abdullah of Jordan. Why? He's not exactly playing ball on this issue with Tel Aviv. And so this is what Haaretz revealed. Israel has big plans for Jordan, but they don't include King Abdullah II. Is that a regime change threat?
That sounds very like. Yes.
So he's a very key individual here, although he's a monarch, the Hashemite king of Jordan. He's also very key because the United States has a very close relationship with Jordan. Britain has an extremely close relationship with Jordan that goes back a long, long ways. They have great cooperation on all levels of intelligence, military affairs, and government affairs. So how is this going to play in terms of the coalition that normally supports Israel? Is there a plan to take out this particular royal family in Jordan in order to make way for the Greater Israel Project and to make it a lot easier and smoother? Obviously, the King of Jordan has got an issue. Is maybe the majority or close to the majority of residents in Jordan have some Palestinian descent, Mike. And refugees as well.
What's his position as leader of Jordan? Is he as much supported as, for example, Assad is in Syria? Or is there an opportunity for outside forces to come into Jordan and stir up conflict within the country?
There's always a chance of that. He's definitely weaker in terms of military power and a security state than Saudi Arabia would be, for instance. Or some of the other more wealthy oil states like Qatar. So he is vulnerable, but he's also popular with a lot of people in Jordan. He is generally regarded by a lot of Jordanians as a good ruler doing a good job, but there's always dissenting parties there. So this is interesting, something to keep an eye on there. Let's take a look at the deal of the century here. So what are we looking at? So this is promising a two-state solution. Once again, the whole deal here is predicated on the promise of a Palestinian state. We'll show you what that state's going to look like in a minute. And so a lot of people think the two-state solution is dead, and it was really just used to buy time for Israel to make facts on the ground to increase settlements, and which they did over the last 30 years. Palestinian statehood is conditional according to this deal, and could happen later.
Oh, so the day they sign on the dotted line, they don't get a state?
No.
They've got to do things before they might get a state at some point in the future?
And if there's any bad behavior, quote, bad behavior by the Palestinians, then they won't get that state, or the deal will kind of be frozen at that point, and then you're back to the status quo. So it's already looking good, isn't it? It's looking great. So the Palestinians must recognize Greater Israel and Jerusalem as its capital. That was non-negotiable for the Palestinians. And of course, the U.S. and Israel just drove right through that barricade of international laws and UN resolutions. So that's not good. Palestinians must recognize a pure Jewish ethno-nationalist state of Israel. So imagine the backlash in Europe against ethno-nationalism, and in the United States, particularly by the liberal left. Where are they on this issue? They should all be up in arms. I mean, is there a place for a pure racial ethno-nationalist state, largely a European settler state in the Middle East in 2020, in the 21st century? So
is this, am I wrong that this is demand for apartheid?
Yes, this is pure apartheid. This is what we call high apartheid, on a level of formality that even South Africa didn't quite have. So let's take a look at the rest of this here. Palestinians must reject terrorism. This is a really important condition to them getting on the path to statehood. So that means they are not allowed to resist any Israeli land grabs or IDF military operations. If they do, that will be deemed as terrorism, and therefore the deal will be frozen once again, and then they'll have to go back to protracted negotiations.
And by resist, that includes throwing rocks?
I don't know. It's not really defined. This is quite a wide berth in terms of how you arbitrarily define all this. So, and again, must meet long list of other unattainable benchmarks. So, as Jared Kushner said, 80 pages with a map. So they've got various benchmarks in there the Palestinians have to meet. Otherwise, no deal. Or they can sort of cancel the deal or put the deal on ice, basically. So what does this mean? Let's say what this basically means is Israel will control Palestinian airspace, Israel to control Palestinian borders, people, goods, and services in and out of the Palestinian territory, and no right of return for Palestinian refugees. Interestingly, though, and I didn't note this here on the graphic, but according to this deal, there will be financial compensation for Jews who had to leave Arab countries. They're going to get financial compensation. That's interesting. So Israel is to control Palestinian access to water, power, airspace, probably includes telecommunications to some degree as well. Israel to restrict use of weapons in Palestinian territory, so that's going to be heavily regulated. In other words, as it is right now, as it stands right now. So regardless of whether the Palestinians accept the plan, Israel has America's blessing to annex the illegally occupied West Bank, the Jordan Valley, and any other territory it covets. So that's going to happen regardless of whether this deal is agreed or not agreed by the Palestinians. So it's an ultimatum, basically. And the U.S. government has officially sanctioned, legalized apartheid rule in Israel and Palestine. That's what this basically boils down to. They have officially sanctioned and legalized apartheid in the occupied territory. So as with Oslo, the peace process, Clinton and Bush's roadmap to peace, Trump and Kushner's deal of the century was designed to be rejected. This is the important point. It's designed to be rejected and to buy time for Israel's next phase of land expansion, effectively continuing with the status quo. So really this is window dressing here. So this is the latest Israeli-U.S. deception, and this will almost certainly lead to war. This is what many experts are saying, Mike. So that's a really important part of this.
Well, an Israeli-Palestinian war or a broader war in the Middle East?
Both.
Right.
Both. It will certainly lead to continued skirmishes and violence between the state of Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, but this has the danger of also expanding into a wider war.
Okay.
That's what this deal will lead to, according to many experts, long-term experts on the region. So I will say I did predict how this was going to go down like a ton of bricks back in May, and I'll point people to this article, Trump and Sons, Kushner's deal of the century, basically bribing the Palestinians to go away. So that's what I said back in May, and it really hasn't changed much since then. So Trump and Sons, here's the business card for Trump and Sons. And you can see Jared behind father-in-law Donnie there, established in 2017. God's #1 property developer. That's their business card. Let's take a look at what Trump and Sons has got in store here for the region. This is their map, a vision of peace, the conceptual map of the future of Israel and Palestine, according to Trump and Sons. As you can see, Mike, take a look at the little green splotches there. That's what supposedly what could be, possibly, if they behave, that could be the Palestinian state. So this reminds us very much like Bantustans in South Africa, townships and Bantustans.
Yeah.
It's really that same system. Or in America, we have the reservation system, the Native American reservation system. And that's more like the blueprint, probably, that Israel is looking to implement, is the reservation system. So they'll get sovereignty, but only on paper, and their borders and everything else will be completely controlled. They don't actually own anything. So that's how it's looking here. And this was the big kicker. Back in May, this was the big promise that $50 billion of direct foreign investment will appear somehow to help stimulate the Palestinian economy. And Kushner was meant to drum that cash up from the Arabs, from the Gulf states. But guess what? It hasn't arrived yet. So it's been 6-7 months, no Gulf cash to fill this $50 billion war chest of investment that's meant to stimulate, quote, the Palestinian economy. Of course, that means the Palestinians won't own anything from that direct foreign investment. That'll be Gulf-owned businesses and enterprises. So, but it hasn't appeared. So Trump and Sons is still working on the 50 billion, and this is really what this is a continuation of here. As you can see, that was Palestine there in 1946. This is the incredibly shrinking Palestinian state, and there you can see what's left of it in 2012, and that's a recent version of this map, but that's very similar to what we showed you with the Trump-Kushner map of Palestine. A few green specks, that's what's left. I assume that's going to be probably half the size of that in about 5 to 10 years. So even less, smaller green specks, actually. So brought to you by Trump and Sons there. So take a screenshot of their business card and get in touch if you want to build a settlement in Greater Israel. So here is Noura Arikat. She is a Palestinian-American human rights lawyer. This is what she said. Palestinians have not been demanding a state. Palestinians have been demanding freedom, dignity, equality. They want the right to return to their homes, not a plot of land that they can put a flag over and pretend is a state. This is not a game. This is about life and death and freedom. She said this live on CNN, actually, this past week. So that's the point, Mike, is the two-state solution has really been a con. From Camp David till today, they're still using this scam to buy time, to increase the amount of homes and land that's being annexed by Israel, and they're doing it again. It's the identical script to what we saw from all of the previous U.S. administrations, and they've just given it a facelift.
Oh, okay. And just to finish this off, then, I mean, Trump did make promises. In the past, as he was campaigning, and also since he became president, that he was going to solve this problem. Do you think that this is going to, as he campaigns for the next election, is this going to be a problem for him, that this is one thing that he has not succeeded in achieving?
I don't think so. It's not going to be a big problem for him, and I'll tell you why, because both the Republicans and the Democrats are pretty much bought and paid for with regards to the Israeli lobby, and they don't tolerate any dissent on that issue. So whether he succeeds or fails on this, it's neither here nor there. And if anybody comes up to defend the Palestinians, they'll be accused of being anti-Semitic. So this is the new political environment on both sides of the Atlantic. Is there any support generally for human rights in Palestine? Any opposition to apartheid has been redefined as anti-Semitic, which I think is ironic, of course, because the Palestinians themselves are Semitic people. So the whole thing doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and that's where we're at.